This is Out Loud and Laughing. Welcome back to the pod, Chosen Fam. We are so glad you're here with us today. Brian, I've been looking forward to this one because our guest is someone who has truly harnessed his superhuman yet humble power. From his superstar spirit to grassroots grit, he graces many types of stages, channeling his charisma from the shining lights of Broadway to bureaucracy and human rights.
This one is extra special for me, John. Today, we are sitting down with the Senior Vice President of Campaigns and Communications at the Human Rights Campaign, a former senior advisor in the Biden administration, and more importantly, one of my favorite people from our days at the University of Florida, Jonathan Lovitz. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Hello, friends. Hi, Brian. Hi, John. Hi, everyone listening and viewing and being a part of the conversation. I'm so thrilled to be with you.
We are so happy. I've been dying to get you on the pod for a while, but you've just been so busy doing all the things, sir.
You know, it's been a time. I was a natural blonde just before the year started. That's how things are going.
Yeah.
But it's a heck of a time to be back in the advocacy fight. But it's nowhere I'd rather be right now.
I feel like you've always been in the advocacy fight, which we're going to deep dive into. But before we do any of that, I kind of want to start at the very beginning because
Okay.
I want to give people a look behind like how we know each other. You know, before the West Wing and the HRC, there was Gainesville in the early 2000s. And we were both kind of figuring it all out between the humidity, the Gator games, kind of being newly out. So like, what was the first memory that pops into your head when you think about kind of being a baby gay era?
Oh my gosh. Well, I one of the reasons I work so close with LGBT youth now is because growing up in South Florida, the Fort Lauderdale area made it easier, certainly than most people have it, compared especially to, a very conservative Catholic upbringing like my husband has, to grow up in a place where going to the Performing Arts Center, going down and passing Wilton Manors, such a big neighborhood was just part of life on the weekends growing up, made the journey easier because less seemed weird to me. And it's just that the whole reason we care so much about visibility is when people recognize the world around them is fine, is full of great diverse things that they can choose or not choose to embrace. So that really made it special. And then by the time I got to Gainesville, I'd been doing theater and working in the performing arts for so long that, I'd had a wealth of gay men, particularly older gay men. Because I grew up near Fort Lauderdale, you had so many who moved there at the height of the AIDS crisis when Fort Lauderdale, most people don't realize, was really a hospice for a lot of people. And then, thank goodness, medications took a great turn and are continuing to improve. And so those men became, these sage mentors in my life. They were some of the few of that generation that made it that I could, really learn from. So I'm really, really proud of that and thrilled that by the time I got to Gainesville, I was pretty close to figuring out. I was a musical theater major at first anyway, so that helped. And then the political science piece came along and I went, wait, you're telling me I can yap like this about things I care about, be out and charge people up and make a living at it? Tell me more. So, the baby gay that got to Gainesville was still figuring out a lot of things, but I'm so grateful that I was grounded in a lot of history and community, which has just permeated everything else that's happened in my life since.
It sounds like you just come with this vigor and you approach life and you sort of grab it by the horns. You talked about visibility too. What drives that? Where does that come from within you?
I mean, there are two answers to that. One, which is, I am so lucky through some of this work, through where I've grown up, how I've grown up, to be able to look left and look right and be able to say, who's not here? Who do I not see at the table? That's the way I was brought up. Those are the organizations and networks I've been a part of, professionally, personally, for most of my life, is to think about who's not here and how can we put that spotlight or megaphone there for them. Pull out the chair at the table, and if there isn't one, build a longer table for them. But the other side of that, and I think it's, we're three white guys having a conversation. It's important to recognize we can walk into just about any room in this country, pull out a chair at the table, sit down, and no one's going to question why we're there. So, a lot of people want to get their feathers raised about privilege and all of these, buzzwords. But all that means is you have less pressure to deliver. So deliver for the others that do and can't be here. So that to me, that is why visibility and this work matters so much, is because I work with these incredible activists from so many communities that just don't have the same kind of access. And so to be able, I joked about this when I ran for office years ago. I'm not a great dresser, but my suits have very long coattails. So if I'm in a room, you're in a room. And I work with and consult with and organize with people who believe in that. And that's what keeps me going every day, plus a lot of coffee.
I love this correlation that you're making between, just your history in theater and then also your advocacy voice, and it sounds like you were a theater powerhouse then, right? It's wild to see how those performance skills have now been translated into literally becoming a spokesperson for our movement. Did you ever think back then that you'd be using your projected voice to lobby for LGBTQ+ rights,
No.
and literally, like,
Um,
be in the room where it happens?
Oh, well done. Plus 10. No, that is I did not, and yet looking back on it, it was sort of predestined for me. I think back, right out of college, I was supposed to come to Washington. I was gonna go to GW, get my master's, do, public policy. I wanted to be the kind of guy that, like, politically saves the Kennedy Center and reinvigorates arts in America, but I got derailed because I booked a national tour of a Broadway show right out of college, and so that ended up being for the best because that was right up against the 2008 election, my second year out. And so I was literally traveling the country the same time the candidates were. And by being out of the East Coast bubble and eating in diners in Alabama on the way to Atlanta, you hear the stories of what Americans actually think and feel that you're not getting on cable news. So there was so much of that that I absorbed before knowing that politics was going to be such a part of my life. The other element of that that also came with the real privilege of getting to tour so young was, this is the early 2000s, the early aughts, and iPhones and smartphones were around, but not as ubiquitous. So, we're still taking our razors and our Motorola bricks into bars and using, golf pencils and business cards to write down people's phone numbers in like the good old days. And what a joy that was to be able to travel the country and meet queer people from every walk of life. I will always remember being in Birmingham, in a gay bar that had a police presence outside to protect it, in a building that could only have been a Pizza Hut before, and you just think, you know what, they made it work, and this doesn't have to be here in Birmingham. So the fact that they're making that happen really inspired me. And then I would think about also, I went to crisscross the whole country. I was 22, 23 years old and went to 48 states with this work. It was incredible. And I remember in Boise, Idaho, going to a gay bar near the university there. One, I was shocked to find, but two, hearing from people who are like, oh, I drive 200 miles to come here because I can't risk a soul I know back home seeing me. So those kinds of stories motivated me to get back into the work. At undergrad with Brian, when we were just we things, Pride Student Union, these organizing groups were there, but they weren't. I don't think that the especially because there wasn't social media of the same kind, the ability to find these things was harder. So you sort of had to know someone already in the tribe to get you plugged in. Now these things find you through targeted algorithms or whatever it is. So I really value the amount of people who pulled me along on that journey. And then, as I've been instilled from my mentors and coaches over my life, you must throw the ladder back down. So that's what I get to do now because of those incredible experiences I had 20 years ago.
Jonathan, you make me feel so much older with our Nextel phones and all the things. Also our Facebook pokes back in the day, all the things that we had to do because
First of all, Brian, we were on the Facebook.
the
So go
Facebook.
put your eye cream on.
That is true. That is true. And a darker room.
I'm dead. I'm
But
dead.
but you did mention like you were on national tours. I think it was Joseph and the Amazing
Yeah.
Technicolor Dreamcoat was one of them. Like you did amazing shit before jumping into some of the advocacy stuff. So I'm giving you your flowers.
Thank
But
you.
as a friend too, I kind of want to know. You were appointed to the Biden administration, director of public affairs. How did that happen?
Well, it's a real testament to community. So, I had been in and around the political sphere for a long time, both in previous roles at the Chamber of Commerce, working with nonprofits that did a lot of capital funding for LGBT and other minority groups. So I got to know a lot of the players involved in Democratic fundraising, and then in political policy making, working with members of the Hill, and then in especially my time at the Chamber of Commerce, I was working on economic policy, which I just really fell in love with and learned the ins and outs of lobbying. We worked on, by the time I left there after about 8 years, we went from two states in the country with inclusive minority procurement laws, meaning, women, people of color, et cetera, got opportunities, got foots in the door that were normally never afforded to those communities, to then add LGBT, disability, veteran, more and more and more communities. By the time I left that role, we had 22 of those enacted everywhere from federal agencies to tiny hometowns of people. So seeing how that worked and how effective a small group can be. I think of the quote that's on my desk, all from, people heard it from The West Wing, but it's from Margaret Mead, the "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. It's the only thing that ever has." I mean, I'm living proof of that because I took a handful of people to go fight this fight with me around the country, and we won. And now to be able to convert that into larger scales, was something that meant the world to me. So friends, the administration, the Biden administration, was by design meant to look like America. It was by far the most diverse in American history. At one point, I remember hearing that we were at least 15% out, which is wild, and especially considering how many of those are older professionals who grew up in a time where they were adjacent to the lavender scare and all through the 80s and 90s when it was still virtually impossible to be out and hold a security clearance in the United States. So, I think about that. And one of my favorite memories of after joining the administration was, folks who had been a part of who had been shoved out in the lavender scare. And hopefully your listeners know they watched Fellow Travelers, but do a deep dive. It's worth it. And it was Eric Servini who wrote the fantastic Deviance War, which every queer person should read, about sort of our attacks and our ability to serve our country. You were sitting there, they're having a book conversation with several hundred out appointees, Karine Jean-Pierre, Pete Buttigieg, we're all there. And we had to stop for a second and look around and realize we're sitting in the building named for the Eisenhower building, named for the president who signed the executive order that said people like us are a national security threat. And here we are now at Pride, hundreds strong, all in jobs that literally changed the face of this country and helped millions of people. And they thought we shouldn't even be in the front door. So let that sink in. So I took so much pride in working with these folks. I mean, literally the Pride Party that President Biden and Dr. Biden threw on the White House lawn, Vice President Harris and Doug threw the most amazing, literally pool party at their mansion, that had drag queens and celebrities, and then most importantly, community leaders and kids and families. Everyone was seen in this government, and that's why I was so proud to be tapped to join it through friends who were working in recruiting for the administration, who wanted diverse talent, people that can speak to and speak for communities that had been underrepresented. And I think about once I got the role and I was working under Secretary Raimondo at the Commerce Department, if you don't have people with lived experience making the policy that affects all of us, someone's left out. If it weren't for a phenomenal female Secretary of Commerce, there wouldn't have been provisions in those billions of dollars of tech subsidies the chips companies got to make sure there was childcare so women can actually enter the tech workforce. If it wasn't for having, I think about the queer roundtables that I was a part of at the Treasury Department and at the White House for improving economic outcomes, because there's still no law saying a bank can't throw queer people out in 2026. So there's still so much work to be done. And yet to be able to sit there with the Secretary of Commerce and say, this is what we need to succeed as a country that works for everybody. It's certainly not happening right now. And that's why it's so important to support and invest in your organizations like HRC, like your state-based organizations that are doing this work day in, day out, literally sandbagging the fort to make sure we don't lose an inch.
You've hit so many incredible points there.
That's a very polite way of saying I talk too much, but thank you.
Well,
No, it's
actually,
great.
it's really great, and I actually was really touched by the Margaret Mead quote. It's something that I too have, pulled out and keep close. You've talked about all of these tables that you've sat at and the incredible privilege that you have to use your voice for good. But now that you're at the HRC, now that you're overseeing all of these massive campaigns, and especially considering the climate of this administration, particularly regarding ICE and the rise of the anti-Semitic rhetoric in our country, how do you keep our chosen family motivated when it feels like we're fighting on so many fronts at once? I mean, the work is great, but like, how do you personally do it, right?
You do it the same way our elders did it and their elders did it before, together. It is, I am not a particularly martial person, but I do think military metaphors are applicable, that you put your strong soldiers at the front, and when they're exhausted, you spread them out and put a fresh flank in. That is why we have to keep investing in our young people to make sure they're getting not just fired up to be engaged, but leadership training. I mean, there's a real gap. We don't have enough young, smart people who want to enter these fields, not just as frontline activists, but as chiefs of staff and accountants and like the people who make these operations work. And so it's also incumbent, I think, upon a lot of these nonprofits and their funders to make sure that they're opening these pipelines up for young people, and that they're a diverse pipeline, and that people in them have a real chance at equity and success, and that they don't just do 2 years out of college at some nonprofit and then go to corporate because it adds another zero. The nonprofit should add another zero, and you'll keep that incredible talent for 20 years. So it is about holding on to each other, embracing each other, mentoring each other, but also, I'm a millennial boss now, and so I am proud to insert GIFs into the conversation. It is there are times when we just need to remember it can't be an 11 all the time. That because there will be plenty of 11s, 12s, and 13s out of 10 coming. So we have to pace, we have to breathe, we have to care for each other. We have to remember, you know, I think speaking of great quotes, for folks listening, watching, if you don't know the name David Mixner, I hope you will. David was my friend, my mentor, my hero. He was in the movement from the Kennedy era to just a few years ago when he unfortunately passed away. But he left in his wake a generation of young and young related people that are growing up in his model, where he said, as a devout Catholic, a lot of people told me as a queer man fighting against HIV stigma and all of these other issues, racial issues, you name it, that it's a sin because of who I am. And he said, the only sin I believe in is not doing something. And that's what gets me out of bed some days when the same way as when you're in freezing cold temperatures on the national tour and you're like, I just can't sing about cats one more time. Please don't make me. And you think, no, there's an 8-year-old out there whose life you're going to change the same way it was when I was 8 years old and saw the chandelier at Phantom Fall the first time and said, I want to do that. So you get out there and you do it for them. You get out there for the kid who's voiceless, and you get out there right now for, if you live in a place that is as free as a New York, a Washington, a San Francisco, you know, remember that freedom is only as strong as we're willing to fight for it. So show up how you can from those strongholds for the Minneapolises, for the Atlantas, for the Philadelphias that are under attack right now. Especially in the age of a phone, you can be an activist from anywhere. And my God, do we need you to be?
I Yes, we need as all the help we can get. And I guess my question is like, what is the hard truth the community needs to hear right now about the state of the country? Like, there are a lot of people out there that clearly did not want this administration. There's a lot of people out there, I think, right now that voted for this administration and don't want it anymore, right? So, like, how can we all rally together? What do people need to hear right now?
I think it's twofold. One, you cannot lose hope. I'm more a Star Trek guy, but just this once, I'll give Star Wars the credit for reminding us that rebellions are built on hope. So it is about staying, earnest in the fact that we have been through things like this before, perhaps not as bad, or more importantly, perhaps not as well documented. And so we do know that we can galvanize and fight. Look at what's happening right now. We have turned momentum around. Just this morning before we recorded, it's February 1st, and a Democrat won in Texas in a district that Trump held by 17 points.
Yeah.
I'm expecting a pig to go by my window any minute. So this is This is a wild time, and we should be energized by that. And they're going to do everything they can to try to discourage all of us from participating, from making us feel like our votes don't count, et cetera. That to me is the most important lesson learned from the last couple of cycles, which is you get the government you show up for. If you don't want this shit anymore, I better see you out at every primary. And I don't just mean for president. The fact that we overturn, I'm thinking about just HRC's work. We helped flip a deeply anti LGBTQ school board in Pennsylvania on its ear and replace all of those moms for liberties, which, they're just. They say they're a million moms. They're really four angry Karens, but
Mhm.
we outdid them. We outsmarted them. We outvoted them because we proved to people this crap is not good for anyone, gay, straight, or anyone in between. So the more we can come together on these things and just say, look, we do not all have to agree, but we do have to coexist in this country. It's the only way. And I think it's also okay to acknowledge, as I think we've all had to reckon with friends, family, the internet, when people say, oh, this isn't who we are. This is who we are. But that doesn't mean it can't change. And it changes when we show up and demand better. We're seeing it in Minneapolis. We just saw it in Texas. I think we're going to see it a lot in these midterms and beyond. And, again, I have to reiterate to people, we get the government we show up for. So whether it's your local city council member all the way up to your president, if you're not involved, that's on you.
Jonathan, you bring up such a good point. I have to be a little vulnerable here and share that I, wasn't really involved in government. And I probably was involved the way many people listening and around are, right? Where you show up for a presidential election, you cast your vote, and that's it. What I think this administration has accidentally done so well is when you expose such a shitty boss, you start to look at all of their constituents around them. You have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and other politicians who have sort of come up. Um, and now I'm starting to see the importance of voting in my local elections and how important and close to home I have the control and power and voice and autonomy to really share and offer up the kind of government I want to see. So thank you for saying that. I think it's really important that we do that. Now I have a question because
Yeah.
as I said, like I'm not great at following a lot of the scheduling. So, could you just really quickly tell our audience like a quick way to think about the year of voting or the cycles of voting? I think that would just be helpful.
Yeah, well, and remember, tech is your friend. There are more apps and more automations, and I don't mean getting you signed up on everybody's fundraising emails. I know we all text the word stop probably more than we text hi mom.
Truth.
So think about things like Oath, which is a great app created by an amazing member of the queer community, specifically to help people figure out where can I stretch a dollar in my contributions, and where do I need to show up. Another great place, certainly, both shameless and shamefully and proudly plugging HRC. We have an entire election, get out the vote plan for this year. And so you can find out through hrc.org, find your nearest steering committee or community chapter and get their alerts to, hey, there's not a vote or an election in our county, but one county over is a critical primary. Come join us in the park this day to do some door knocking and signage and all this stuff. Like, there are so many ways to be involved. The other big thing too is think about what matters to you. It doesn't always have to be necessarily the race that's immediately in your neck of the woods. For a lot of us, we live in particular red or blue bubbles, and while the overall makeup might not change, our ability to influence nearby can. So I think a lot about, I think about people who are deeply pro environment. It's very hard to find candidates that are going to be super vocal about that right now, particularly during a time of America's deep energy and need for deep independence. And then you've got Mary Portola running out of Alaska to be the next senator, who's entirely running on a platform of we can have fish and beautiful land and a successful country too. Like, there are people who will speak to your values wherever they are. I think about whether it's the James Tallaricos of the world in Texas right now who is using a preacher's tone to speak to the people in Texas the way they want to be spoken to about the issues they care about. up to Big Gretch in Michigan, who uses amazing hockey mom energy to get everyone fired up for things right, left, and center. So find what matters to you and seek those people out. The internet's your friend. And then share that, I think, is the other most important thing. You don't have to make politics your whole personality. I think more than enough of us do for you. Don't worry. But you should be using some of your social media, some of your social capital with your friends, your family, your colleagues to tell them, hey, between every third cat gif, here's something I really care about and someone I'm investing in or fighting for. I want you to know who they are.
So well said, and such a good way to end on the politics of it all. We're going to segue a
Okay.
little bit, Jonathan, we're going to move away from the West Wing to the locker room. But since you're a Gator in the house, we're going to call this game This or That, the Gator Gone Wild edition.
It's time for another round of This or That, the unhinged get to know you game.
Are you ready? We basically give you two options. You pick the option.
Okay.
And we like a little bit of like an answer after, but you don't have to.
Okay. Bring it.
Okay. The first one's Gainesville humidity or DC red tape?
DC red tape, just because I'm a really big junkie for good public transit.
That's great. Are you a scruff or no scruff guy?
On my face or my phone?
That's the best follow-up we've ever had, but yes.
Yes, I like a little scruff, especially because there's a little extra gray showing these days,
Oh.
given the current situation.
Yes. I know the grays are popping up everywhere, and it's kind of sad, but I'm embracing. Yeah, exactly. Starting on the sides. Local impact or federal change?
Yes. You don't have one without the other.
It's yeah.
One of the best things, very quick segue, what I learned working in at the Commerce Department, part of my job was to get those billions and billions of dollars of pandemic recovery grants to cities, to small towns and to tribal nations. And I met so many mayors and chiefs and development officers from these towns who said, you don't understand, this is our lifeline. Yes, this is the federal government coming in and rescuing us, with some essential cash and some technical resources and all that. But this is a local solution. You were going to, I remember hugging the mayor of Allentown, PA, one of the most, decimated centers of American industry that used to be one of the most important in our country. And we brought him millions of dollars to reopen a manufacturing center and help put construction and manufacturing workers back on the assembly line. And he hugged me, and the union bosses hugged me, and their wives hugged me, and all, and my bosses and everyone who was there saying, we didn't think we'd ever recover. So all politics are local because they came to Washington and said, with this investment, here's all the good we can do. And it needed such great organizing at the street corner level to get all the way to Washington, D.C. and get to that, big check from Publishers Clearinghouse.
That's amazing. It sounds like you're working a lot and your brain fires probably a million miles a minute. So when you find time to relax, are you doing it on top of an NYC rooftop or are you on the beach in Miami?
I am near water. The Florida boy and the Cancer in me needs that. So maybe a cruise balcony, maybe a beautiful lake with a cabin and some friends. Yeah, I'm pretty open-minded as long as I can turn my phone off.
Which is not easy to do these days. Would you prefer a Broadway opening night or election night?
Either way, no one sleeps until the reviews come out.
For sure.
I think opening night, because election night's great, but the food is better at the opening night parties.
The
Fair.
gays just do it better,
We do.
Are you a chess guy or are you a butt guy?
Oh, I thought you said chess. I was like, I'm good. I think chess. Also, because that's what I'm trying hardest to build. And heated rivalry showed us that at this
Oh,
point,
yeah.
don't even try to compete.
Yeah, the butt game has already been won. Do you prefer a shower or a bath?
Shower. And I used to mock Tom Ford when he's like, I take 10 baths a day. And I was like, wait, that actually sounds wonderful, but I want them to be showers with like really nice products and preferably like some aromatherapy and yeah.
John's
Not
language.
n yeah, yeah, seriously, I'm not suggesting we shower together. However, I was in a zen moment just now thinking about how wonderful a shower sounds right now.
It's
Uh,
amazing what you invest in your now 40s versus, your 20s in your first apartment when you're just happy to have Tupperware to make dinner in. And now it's like, if I don't have a rain shower and a soft light in my bathroom, this isn't gonna work.
from the bathroom to the bedroom, I mean, 40 just hits everywhere. So, are you like an early bird? Are you a night owl? Like, how is your sleep patterns these days?
I am I'm fully versed because this job makes you sometimes up at 4 a.m. to catch a flight to go somewhere, or up super late to finish a legislation that has to be submitted by midnight, or whatever it could be. We did not have on our bingo card organizing hundreds of people in LA to come out to the defense of Don Lemon this week, but we pulled that off in 24 hours. So
Amazing.
these jobs are not for the faint of heart, but I am also grateful that I've got an incredible husband and now a brand new rescue puppy that I hope everyone's thinking about adopting
Yes.
in these tough times. The dogs could use your love and you could use it back. That reminds me every day that you have to check out, even for a few minutes. Um, Nobody, and another great piece of advice from mentors in the past was nobody's tombstone said, "Thank God they stayed up late for that spreadsheet."
Truth.
Fair. You said your verse. So would love to go into the next question. Do you prefer top or bottom of the ballot?
Ooh, uh, I mean, I like to run a train the whole way through a party, so
Yeah.
straight ticket ballot, baby.
I love that. That's so great. At the end of your legacy, will you want to be remembered for the bills you passed or the people you helped?
I think they're the same thing.
They are.
Um,
They
I
can be. They should
I'll
be.
a little bit of vulnerability, especially as I'm getting a little bit older and more into, these senior roles where I'm realizing I just don't have a ton more up to go. Is all of that pressure, all of that anxiety, trying to get every award, trying to be in every room, all that, it all is essential early in your career to then be able to glide and do the hard work later. So all of the hustle, all of the stuff that makes us go every day, God, I just can't do this one more time. It all adds up and is worth it. So for me, I think they have to be the same thing because if you're chasing titles, you're chasing prizes, you're chasing promotions, you're just getting pieces of paper. But if you can do something that can touch a life, whether it's one or a billion, you've done something that will outlast you. And you can leave that behind. I used to tell that a lot to the interns that I had at the Biden administration. We had so many that came through. It was such a great learning experience for young people. And I encourage anyone out there with high school and college age kids, get them into some kind of public service young. They will see what it means to take care of people for a living and will change what they want to do for the rest of their lives forever. And so I would tell them all the time, look, you are going to do something here that will end up in the Federal Register, on C-SPAN, in the permanent record forever that may only touch one person, but that one person could then catalyze that into change for millions. So treat it with the respect that it deserves, and it will pay off. And I see that with friends in nonprofits, in social good work all over the country, and even friends just living their daily lives with a little bit of extra purpose, especially right now. The internet's a dark place. If you could fill it with a little extra joy every now and then, I think we could all turn out a little better.
Well, Jonathan, I just have to say, uh, thank you for bringing your light to and illuminating what could be probably a darker place. And thank you for the work that you're doing and for being so real with us today and bringing it all to the pod. You really are a powerhouse for our community.
Thank you, friends. John, it's really a pleasure. Brian, it's been too long, and I hope I get to see you both. Come visit DC soon. There's a lot going on. I maybe wait till the ice is melted. But it is a beautiful city. I hope you guys come visit, and I look forward to seeing you as we tackle this really big midterm year. And just want to remind everyone watching and listening, the only sin out there is not doing something. So uh, get out there, find something that matters to you, and attach your heart to it. You'll be so glad you did.
100% agree. And thank you for showing us that you could be a Gator, a performer, a political force all at once. And more importantly, dear friend of mine, you're stuck with me, Jonathan. Thanks so much.
Thank
Bye,
you.
y'all.
This was Out Loud and Laughing.
We're available everywhere you get your podcasts: Spotify, Apple, YouTube, iHeart, or wherever.